Those 4 words have traveled across generations, quoted by presidents, whispered at graduations, even engraved on tombstones. They symbolize hope, optimism, and a vision of the future. But what most fans don't realize is that behind the optimistic dream of Star Trek, the production was hanging by a thread. The cast wasn't just smiling and beaming into the stars, they were feuding, competing, and sometimes even risking their lives. The studio wasn't always supportive. Sets nearly burned, props were lost in storage, and the entire show came close to being buried before it even aired. Here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you've probably never heard. Let's saddle up.
Number 1.
In 1965, Gene Roddenberry walked into NBC with a dream. He wasn't pitching another space adventure about laser guns and monsters. And before we go any further, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. A lot of viewers forget, but it really helps keep these stories alive. No, his vision was different. He wanted a series that would hold a mirror up to humanity, exploring philosophy, morality, and questions of identity. The pilot, titled The Cage, introduced Captain Christopher Pike, portrayed by Jeffrey Hunter. The tone was deliberate, almost academic. The story dealt with illusion, captivity, and the struggles of free will. And NBC executives hated it. Their notes were brutal, too cerebral, too slow, too strange. In their eyes, it lacked action. The lead, they felt, was too reserved. And worst of all, they didn't think American audiences wanted a space show that made them think. Usually, that's the end. Pilot rejected, project dead. But then something unprecedented happened. NBC did something it had never done before. They ordered a second pilot. Roddenberry retooled everything. Out went Pike. In came William Shatner as the more charismatic Captain James T. Kirk. The pacing was faster, the action sharper. And standing at Kirk's side was a new science officer, an alien with pointed ears who would become the soul of the franchise, Spock. That second chance wasn't just a small victory. It changed TV history. Without it, Star Trek would have been a forgotten experiment from the 1960s. Instead, it became a cultural phenomenon.
2.
It's hard to imagine Star Trek without Spock. His logical voice, his Vulcan salute, his half-human struggle for identity. He became one of the most beloved characters in all of science fiction. But here's the truth. NBC executives wanted him gone. When they first saw Leonard Nimoy in costume, with pointed ears and arched eyebrows, they panicked. They said he looked like the devil. Religious groups they feared might boycott the show. Their solution? Cut Spock entirely. But Gene Roddenberry fought back. He refused to remove Spock from the bridge. To him, Spock wasn't just another character. He represented logic and diversity, an alien who still belonged among humans. The gamble worked. When test audiences saw Nimoy's performance, they loved it. What the network feared would spark controversy instead became unforgettable television. Spock went from being a potential PR disaster to the cornerstone of the franchise, and in many ways, the reason the series survived its rocky beginnings.
Number 3.
Here's a twist most fans never expect. Star Trek owes its very existence to Lucille Ball. Yes, that Lucille Ball, the Queen of Comedy, star of I Love Lucy. But she wasn't just a performer. By the mid-1960s, she was also the head of Desilu Productions, one of Hollywood's most influential studios. When NBC hesitated to fund the second pilot, executives at Desilu were nervous. Star Trek was expensive, and science fiction wasn't exactly mainstream television at the time. Some board members warned Ball that backing Roddenberry's vision could sink the studio financially, but Lucille Ball believed in it anyway. She personally approved the budget for the new pilot, and this is the wild part. Ball didn't even know much about science fiction. What she recognized was Roddenberry's passion and the show's potential for something different. Without her decision, Star Trek would have ended in 1965 as nothing more than an unaired curiosity. Instead, it launched a universe. One of the greatest icons of comedy became, indirectly, one of the most important figures in science fiction history.
Number 4.
When fans picture Star Trek, they picture the USS Enterprise. Sleek, futuristic, and instantly recognizable. The model used for exterior shots was an impressive 11-foot structure built with painstaking detail. And yet, after the original series ended, that legendary starship was treated like junk. The Enterprise model was shoved into storage, forgotten, shuffled between warehouses, even stuffed into trash bags at one point. At one stage, it came dangerously close to being destroyed entirely. It wasn't saved by executives or archivists. It was rescued by accident. A studio worker who happened to be a fan recognized the model and decided it was worth preserving. Today, that same ship is protected in the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. But think about it. The most iconic vessel in television history was just one careless janitor's decision away from ending up in a dumpster.
Number 5.
To millions, Gene Roddenberry is remembered as the visionary creator of Star Trek, but when the series ended in 1969, things weren't as glamorous as they appeared. Roddenberry found himself in debt, facing lawsuits and disputes over royalties. Star Trek hadn't yet become the billion-dollar franchise it is today. Back then, it was a canceled show with a small but passionate fan base. To keep himself afloat, Roddenberry began quietly selling unused scripts, personal notes, and behind-the-scenes memos to fans. These weren't officially licensed collectibles. They were survival. Each page, each signature, was another way to pay off legal bills and keep the lights on. It's humbling to realize that the man who imagined the 23rd century was struggling just to make it through the 20th. And yet, those sales kept him going until the fan movement grew strong enough to resurrect Star Trek in syndication, conventions, and eventually, the big screen.
Number 6.
On screen, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock were the perfect pairing. Bold instinct paired with calm logic, two halves of the Enterprise's beating heart. But off-screen, things were far less harmonious. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy clashed constantly during filming. It wasn't about talent, it was about attention. Shatner was the star, the captain, the name at the top of the credits. But as Spock's popularity grew with fans, Shatner began to feel overshadowed. Reports from the set described disputes over lighting, over fan mail, even over who got the best camera angles. Shatner allegedly demanded adjustments to keep the spotlight on him, while Nimoy quietly pushed back, frustrated at always playing second to a captain he didn't always agree with. It wasn't open warfare, it was subtler. Cold silences between takes, unspoken tension lingering on set. Their relationship eventually thawed years later, but during those early seasons, the Bond fans saw on TV was hiding a very different story. The irony? That unspoken competition may have fueled their performances, making the dynamic between Kirk and Spock even more electrifying.
Number 7.
If Shatner's relationship with Nimoy was tense but salvageable, his relationship with George Takei, who played Sulu, was a different story entirely. Takei has spoken openly about his frustrations with Shatner. He claimed Shatner often dismissed him, undermined him, and was hungry for the spotlight in ways that left the rest of the cast feeling sidelined. Takei went on record saying bluntly, "We were never friends." The feud didn't fade with time. Even after decades, even after countless conventions and anniversary specials, the icy distance remained. Fans noticed it too. While the Enterprise crew appeared united on screen, off-screen some wounds never healed. To this day, the rift between Takei and Shatner is one of television's most famous behind-the-scenes rivalries. A reminder that even in a show about unity and exploration, human egos can clash harder than starships in battle.
Number 8.
By the second season, NBC wanted something more than just science fiction. They wanted sex appeal. And in the 1960s, that meant one thing: the Beatles. Executives told Gene Roddenberry to bring in a Davy Jones type, someone young, handsome, and appealing to teenage audiences. The result was Ensign Pavel Chekhov, played by Walter Koenig. With his mop-top haircut and youthful charm, Chekhov wasn't introduced for story reasons. He was a marketing strategy. The character was designed to catch the wave of Beatlemania and give the show a pop culture edge. But what started as a studio demand ended up becoming a fan favorite. Chekhov not only gave younger viewers someone to connect with, he also became a symbol of global unity. In the middle of the Cold War, having a Russian officer on the bridge of an American starship was radical. It was Star Trek quietly saying, "In the future, we'll get past this." What began as a haircut inspired by the Beatles became one of the show's boldest statements about peace.
Number 9.
Before he became the cranky but lovable Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, actor DeForest Kelley nearly walked away from Star Trek. Kelley was already known in Hollywood for playing villains in westerns. He worried that taking a role in a science fiction series would lock him into typecasting, or worse, sink his career entirely. When Roddenberry offered him the part, Kelley hesitated, and then he hesitated again. But finally, he said yes, and thank goodness he did. Kelley's performance as McCoy, sharp-tongued, sarcastic, but always full of heart, became one of the defining elements of the series. He brought warmth and humanity to balance out Spock's cold logic and Kirk's fiery instinct. Without him, Star Trek would have felt colder, less human. His catchphrases, his grumpy charm, and his hidden compassion made McCoy one of the most beloved doctors in television history.
Number 10.
Fans know him as Montgomery Scotty Scott, the miracle-working engineer who always found a way to keep the USS Enterprise running. But the man behind the role, James Doohan, carried a secret that most viewers never noticed. Doohan was a real-life war hero. He fought in World War II, storming the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. During the invasion, he was struck by machine gun fire, and one bullet cost him the middle finger of his right hand. Rather than let it define him, Doohan mastered the art of hiding his injury on camera. Clever blocking, props, and camera angles concealed his missing finger in nearly every scene. Most fans watching in the 1960s never even realized. Behind the transporter console was not just an actor playing a hero, but a man who had already survived one of the deadliest battles in human history.
Number 11.
Not every memorable moment in Star Trek came from phasers or space battles. Sometimes it was the smallest, most ordinary scenes that stuck with fans forever. Take the Next Generation episode, The Price. In the middle of the story, there's a simple sequence. Doctor, Beverly Crusher, and Counselor Deanna Troi stretching in the ship's gym. On paper, it was harmless. Two characters talking, unwinding, doing a little yoga. But fans didn't see it that way. That casual moment became one of the most paused and replayed scenes in Star Trek history. It wasn't about the dialogue. It was about the surprising, lighthearted intimacy between two fan-favorite characters. What was meant to be a filler moment of relaxation turned into a pop culture legend. To this day, conventions still joke about the yoga scene, proof that sometimes the most unexpected details become the ones that fans never forget.
Number 12.
Before she was in Interview with the Vampire, before she was in Spider-Man, before Hollywood stardom, Kirsten Dunst stepped onto the set of Star Trek, The Next Generation. She was only 11 years old when she appeared in the haunting episode Dark Page, playing a telepathic alien child opposite Majel Barrett as Lwaxana Troi. The role wasn't cute or comedic. It was emotional, serious, and demanding, and young Dunst delivered. Her performance was so strong that it stood out even among veteran actors. Most viewers watching at the time had no idea that the quiet little girl on screen would grow up to become one of Hollywood's biggest names. Star Trek has always been about discovering new worlds, and in this case, it quietly introduced a future star to the world.
Number 13.
Television production in the 1960s was a fragile process. There were no cloud backups, no digital archives. If something happened to a film reel, it was gone. And that's exactly what almost happened to one Star Trek episode. During the run of the original series, a staff member accidentally recorded over a master reel, erasing the only complete copy of an episode. Panic erupted. With a deadline looming, the production team scrambled to reconstruct the episode using leftover shots, B-roll footage, and whatever scraps they could find. The final version aired with small glitches, but most fans never noticed. Behind the scenes, though, it was chaos. One careless mistake had nearly wiped out a piece of Star Trek history forever. It's a reminder that some of the stories we still enjoy today only survived by pure luck and frantic last-minute problem solving.
Number 14.
Before Star Trek, the motion picture, Paramount had a different plan. In the mid-1970s, the studio prepared to launch a brand new TV series called Phase 2. The idea was bold: a fresh crew, new adventures, and surprisingly, no Captain Kirk. Early drafts left William Shatner barely involved, and Spock was missing entirely. In his place was a new Vulcan science officer designed to continue the franchise without relying on the original cast. Sets were built, scripts were written, casting was underway. Star Trek was about to boldly go into a completely different direction. But then, the plug was pulled. Instead of Phase 2, Paramount decided to rework the idea into a movie. The result became Star Trek, the motion picture, and the original crew returned for the big screen. Phase 2 never saw the light of day, but its DNA lived on. Many of its concepts, new ships, new characters, even certain plot lines, were later recycled into Star Trek: The Next Generation. What looked like a dead project became the seed for Star Trek's future.
Number 15.
This might be the strangest fact of all. In 1973, during production of the animated Star Trek series, a young fan named Fred Bronson submitted a story idea about Spock being cloned. Bronson wasn't a seasoned writer. He wasn't even a teenager. He was just 10 years old. Normally, studios toss fan submissions straight into the trash. But in this case, the idea caught the attention of Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov. Koenig liked it enough to help refine it. The result? The Infinite Vulcan, a fully produced canon Star Trek episode written by a child. Think about that. Out of all the massive Hollywood franchises, only Star Trek gave a 10-year-old kid the chance to leave his mark on history. It's one of the clearest examples of how deeply the show respected its fans, and how willing it was to take risks no other series would.
Number 16.
Star Trek was always meant to be science fiction, a dream of the future, not a manual. But here's the twist. Real astronauts and NASA engineers have admitted that Star Trek sometimes prepared them better than their own training videos. Why? Because the show didn't just invent gadgets. It showed how crews communicated, how a chain of command functioned, and how people solved problems under pressure. Veteran astronauts have said that watching Captain Kirk, Spock, and McCoy argue their way through impossible decisions was like a lesson in critical thinking and teamwork. In other words, Star Trek wasn't just inspiring viewers, it was quietly shaping the very people who would later explore space for real.
Number 17.
Those iconic pointed ears might look simple, but for Leonard Nimoy, they were torture. The first versions of Spock's ears were made of fragile foam latex. Under the hot studio lights, they didn't last long. They melted, they peeled. Sometimes they even slid right off his face in the middle of filming. Crews had to pause production constantly just to reglue and reshape the ears. Nimoy went through dozens of pairs every season. What fans saw as flawless alien makeup was really a fragile illusion, held together with sweat, glue, and endless patience. The Vulcan calms you saw on screen, that was Nimoy holding it together while his ears literally melted.
Number 18.
If Star Trek had a secret heartbeat, it was Majel Barrett. She started as Nurse Christine Chapel in the original series, but her role stretched far beyond that. She became the soothing voice of the ship's computer. She later played Lwaxana Troi, a character equal parts eccentric and heartfelt. And through it all, she was also Gene Roddenberry's wife. For over 30 years, Barrett's voice or presence appeared in nearly every version of Star Trek. The original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even Enterprise. Her fingerprints are everywhere. To fans, she wasn't just a recurring actor. She was the connective tissue, the spirit that tied generations of Trek together. She truly earned her nickname, the First Lady of Star Trek.
Number 19.
Every TV show has bloopers. Star Trek had one that became a legend. In the episode Arena, Captain Kirk battles the Gorn, a reptilian alien in a stiff rubber costume. The fight choreography, awkward at best. Shatner's punches missed by miles. The Gorn's claws ripped mid-take. The giant rocks they threw at each other were obviously made of foam. By all accounts, it should have been laughable, and it was. But fans loved it anyway. That clumsy, slow-motion duel became one of the most unforgettable moments in Star Trek history. It's been parodied endlessly, recreated in modern Trek, and celebrated in memes across the internet. Proof that sometimes the cheesiest mistakes hit harder than the most carefully choreographed scenes.
Number 20.
Yes, you heard that right. At one point, Gene Roddenberry considered making a musical episode of Star Trek. The idea? The Enterprise would encounter an alien race that communicated only through music. The crew would be forced to sing in order to communicate, including Spock. Leonard Nimoy was horrified. He argued passionately that it would destroy Spock's image. The cool, logical science officer suddenly belting out tunes? It would ruin everything. Roddenberry eventually shed the idea, but somewhere in a dusty file cabinet, drafts of that lost musical script may still exist. Fans still wonder, if it had been filmed, what song would Spock have sung?
Bonus.
Hollywood is built on illusion. The flash of light, the smoke, the stunt that looks real but isn't. But in the 1960s, television didn't have CGI or computer simulations. If you wanted an explosion, you read real fire. If you wanted danger, you created danger. And sometimes that illusion came terrifyingly close to turning into tragedy. During the filming of the original series episode The Apple, the crew was setting up one of those routine but risky stunts. The story called for Kirk's landing party to be attacked by hidden alien defenses, blasts of fire erupting from the ground. Nothing too complicated, at least on paper. A small charge would ignite. The stuntman would leap back. The audience at home would waste at the danger of an alien world. That stuntman's name was J. Jones. Jones was no rookie. He was one of the industry's toughest, most reliable performers. The kind of man you trusted with dangerous work. But even the best can't prepare for when something goes wrong. When the cameras rolled, the explosion didn't just pop. It detonated with far more force than anyone expected. Too close, too hot, too powerful. In less than a second, Jones was thrown violently backward. His uniform caught fire. Flames engulfed his body as he hit the ground. We set. The reaction was instant chaos. Crew members screamed, some frost in shock. Others rushed in, tearing off jackets, grabbing fire blankets, anything to smother the flames. You can almost imagine the silence just before the panic, that heart-stopping moment when everyone realized the stunt had gone horribly wrong. Jones fought desperately to rip off burning fabric, wasting for air as smoke choked the set. For those few seconds, Star Trek wasn't science fiction anymore. It was real. A man was burning alive in front of his colleagues. Miraculously, he survived. He was badly burned, shaken, and scarred, but alive. And the production learned a lesson it would never forget. From that day forward, Star Trek began enforcing stricter safety measures. Fire-retardant costumes were introduced. Pyrotechnic charges were placed further from performers. Stunts were rehearsed again and again before a camera was even turned on. Because the near death of J. Jones proved one unshakable truth. No television show, no matter how beloved, was worth a human life. But the story doesn't end there. In interviews years later, stunt coordinators and actors admitted that this accident changed the culture of Hollywood stunts. Other productions quietly adopted similar safety standards after hearing what happened on the Star Trek set. In a strange way, that fiery accident helped make the entire industry safer for generations of stunt performers who followed. And here's the haunting part. Watch the episode today, and you'd never know how close it came to being someone's last day alive. The scene looks thrilling, even routine. The danger feels controlled. But behind that illusion is a man who walked away burned, shaken, and forever remembered by those who worked beside him. So the next time you see Captain Kirk dodge a fiery blast, remember, there's a story behind the flames. A story of risk, survival, and the invisible heroes who put their bodies on the line so the rest of us could believe in the dream of Star Trek. And if you enjoyed uncovering these hidden Star Trek secrets, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey through TV's strangest stories.